Here at the Register Mill, I'm Robert Connolly, and here with Galesburg native Kathleen Barber.
Hi.
About 6 weeks ago, your book "Are You Sleeping" came out. What's the last 6 weeks been like?
They've been pretty exciting. I originally sold the book in April of 2016, so waiting for it to come out in August of 2017 felt like a really, really long time. But once it came out, then a lot of things started happening. So it came out in North America on August 1st, but it's also come out since then in the UK and Germany, and it comes out in Italy maybe this week or next week. So it's been really exciting. A lot of people have been reaching out to me and saying that they read it, which is probably the best part about being an author, hearing that people have read the book and enjoyed it.
So, did you ever think you'd have a book published in different languages like that?
No, that took me completely by surprise. The first time that my agent called and said that there was interest from an Italian publisher, I was like, what? Why? But so it's neat. The book, like I said, is out in the German translation, and the Italian one is coming soon. But I've also sold the rights to the French translation, the Spanish translation, and the Russian translation. I just sold like last week.
So do you plan on going to some of those countries for?
I would love to. They're not going to pay for me to do that. So if I get there, then I think it would be exciting. I have a friend that lives in Germany, and so she sent me a picture of the German book, which is pretty cool.
Earlier today you were at both Silas Willard and Galesburg High School, where you graduated in 2000. What was that like to kind of talk to kids that were, you were in those same shoes?
It was so great. I have wanted to write books since I was just a little kid. So going back to Silas and talking to kids that were the same age that I was when I was first getting really interested in writing was really cool. I was really nervous because I don't spend a lot of time with kids, so I wasn't sure if what I had to say would be interesting to them. But they were great. They seemed really interested. We did a project where they kind of like created characters, and it was really neat. And it was a lot of fun to go back to GHS too. I hadn't been there since I graduated, and they were a great audience also.
Is there like a recommended reading age or anything like that for your book?
Well, it's an adult book, and it does have some adult language in it. So I know that they do not actually have it in the library at Galesburg High School. So I didn't really talk necessarily about my book, but more about like how to write a book.
Gotcha. What kind of went into the process of like, do I include adult language? Do I not?
I tend to read books that are written more for an adult audience, and so to me, the fact that it felt more authentic to my characters, that they would be, possibly, using some curse words. It just felt more authentic to me. So that was kind of just how it happened.
And I guess there are a ton of lists out there and things like that. Have you gotten on any lists or any awards, or what's that process like?
So every once in a while I'll get, I'll see that like my book is on, 10 thrillers you might have missed this summer sort of list, which is always really exciting. I usually don't know that that's happening until somebody tags me on it on Twitter. But I've gotten reviewed by a bunch of trade publications, and they've generally been favorable. I actually got a starred review from Publishers Weekly, which is like a trade journal, and I actually just found out like an hour ago that I got a starred review from the Library Journal, which is another trade publication. And when it says it's like a starred review, it means that like not only did they like it, they think it's like one of the best that they reviewed for that period. So that's really exciting.
And so you're back in town for a couple days, and there's an event Thursday night at the public library.
Yes.
What's going to be going on there?
So I'll probably read a little bit from the book, and I'll kind of talk a little bit about how I kind of got the idea for writing the book. And so that's kind of like what I've been doing when I have readings other places. And so I generally also let people ask questions. So sometimes people like to ask about, how I bright and things like that, which is always nice.
And so for those that might not know, what is Are You Sleeping about?
Oh, sure. So Are You Sleeping is a suspense novel, and it's about a woman whose father was murdered 13 years ago, and she's done a lot of work to try and like put her past behind her. But then this podcast, which is kind of like the podcast Serial, if you listen to that, this podcast comes out and it's reinvestigating this old murder. And so then that kind of throws the main character and her family kind of into this tailspin. And so the book is kind of about how it affects them.
And I've had a lot going on, but I did start reading it last night.
Oh, great,
and
thanks.
You've got these, I guess, snippets between chapters about, I guess, like an actual transcript of the podcast, or like fake or I guess created like Facebook posts and things like that. Was that kind of fun to write those parts?
Yeah, that part was a lot of fun. That kind of came about because when I was listening to Serial, which is kind of what inspired the book, I was spending a lot of time on like Twitter and Reddit and stuff reading about the case. And so that felt really integral to, my experience with the podcast. So it felt like the characters would need to be having the same experience. So it was fun to like come up with these handles. It's also been fun to see the handles translated into these other languages. One of the handles is like Tiny Dancer, which I thought was a pretty obvious Elton John reference. But like in the Italian translation, they translated it to Mini Ballerina, which, it's quite lovely.
Yeah. So what was that whole process like to publish your first novel?
It was a lot of work. I after I wrote the book, I had to like look for a literary agent who's kind of like the person that connects authors with publishers, and that part is really hard. You send out all these letters and nobody responds, and you feel really, really bad about yourself. But eventually I found an agent, and then she tried to sell the book to some publishers. A lot of them rejected me, but 3 of them were actually really interested, so they actually had a little bidding war, which was probably the most exciting thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life. But it's been great.
And so you're in the process of writing a second book. How's that going?
It's going. So I've written, the first 50 pages of it, but the rest of it is a lot of notes, kind of like piled in a stack of paper, and then some more notes on my computer. So it's going, but I'm looking forward to kind of like digging into it this winter.
And what type of media appearances have you made, such as like TV, radio, or even podcasts?
Yeah. So the second week that the book was out, I was over in Peoria, and I did a really short TV segment with somebody over there on with the Barnes & Noble lady for the television in Peoria. And I recently taped a podcast for The Big Listen, which is one of NPR's podcasts, and it's kind of like a podcast about podcasts. So that was a lot of fun. And a while back, like months ago before the book was out, I taped a podcast with Scott Reeder, who does this podcast called Suspect Convictions for the NPR affiliate, and that was really interesting. I've done a couple others, like the XOXO After Dark podcast and the GSMC Book Review podcast.
And what's your experience been like with fans so far? Like, do you have like a Facebook and a Twitter page that you interact with them?
Yeah, I do. So I've got a Facebook page. I've got a Twitter account. I also have an Instagram account. And book people are really, really active on Instagram. They call it Bookstagram, which I think is pretty clever. But so a lot of the people on Instagram have been the ones who have been really, really excited about it, which is nice. They take like really creative pictures of the book, with like their pets or flowers or whatever, and they tag me in it, and they've been really great. A lot of them are like, we can't wait for the next book, which really makes me really happy.
And for those wondering, where can people find your book?
Well, I believe that they've got it at Stone Alley, but you can generally buy it anywhere that books are sold. So it's on Amazon, it's at Barnes & Noble, it's in a lot of independent booksellers also.
And I guess what's that mean to you that people can walk into Stone Alley, the local bookstore, and buy your book here where you grew up?
It's so nice. It's it's more than I ever dared to dream. I've always wanted to see my book in print, but I never really expected that it would be available so widely, and that it would be here where a lot of people that I love live and can just go and get it.
And do you find yourself reading physical books, or do you do much of the tablet, Kindle reading?
Yeah, I've really migrated back to physical books. I was really into my Kindle for a while, particularly when I was living in New York, because I spent a lot of time commuting, and so it was easier to read a Kindle while I was jammed on the train. But I really like the feel of holding a book in my hand.
I guess, is that almost like album sales, Kindle sales?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, albums are really coming back, I feel like.
I guess, is there anything else you want to say, or are there any questions, Mitch? Or?
No, I don't have any here.
Yeah. No, I mean, thank you so much for having me. I hope to see people at the library on Thursday. I'm looking forward to that.
And the book is Are You Sleeping? And it's available from most major retailers and Stone Alley on Main Street.
Great. Thank you so much.